Welcome to vocabulary lesson number 6. This is your third video of 3 videos for the second additional vocabulary focus. There are 20 words in this video and there's 20 words in each of the previous videos, which gives you 60 vocabulary words to learn for this assessment. Alright, let's get started. So, for your first word, you have antagonist, or antagonize. So antagonist is the noun, and antagonize is the verb, to antagonize. So the antagonist antagonizes. And what this means is opposition, hostility, and resistance. So you probably have already heard this as the literary term, the protagonist and antagonist. But antagonist is actually a vocabulary word that operates outside of literary terms. So, an example of this is Bart Simpson, in order to help his friend Milhouse, antagonize the antagonist of their story. So it uses both of them. So it's very similar to the literary term, if not the same. To antagonize is to show opposition and hostility and resistance to the antagonist, which is essentially the one who's showing resistance to them. So in the two sides, you antagonize your antagonizer. Alright, so on to the next one. We have arbitrary. So subject to individual judgments. So arbitrary is an adjective, and let's take a look at it in the sentence. So Camilla found her sister's choice of hobbies arbitrary. So we see the adjective, it describes the hobbies as arbitrary. One day, she wanted to be the first female football player, and the next day, she spent all day reading about how to make cheese. So what makes this arbitrary is the fact that it's subject to individual judgment. Only her little sister knows why these two things interest her. To us, they seem completely different. And therefore, from the outsider's perspective, things seem arbitrary because it's an individual judgment, one that we cannot really understand. Alright, so on to the next word. Oh, and really quickly, if you're looking for the verb version of arbitrary, it is arbitrate. Alright, to arbitrate and then arbitrary. So the next word that we're looking at is austere. Is austere, which is an adjective, and it means severe and without frills. So here we have the sentence, the painting Whistler's mother depicts an austerely dressed woman sitting in an unequally unadorned room. So austere is the adjective, and therefore austerely is the adverb. And you'll notice that her dress is very simple, unadorned, unembellished, if you're thinking of some previous vocabulary words. And the room itself is pretty plain with the gray walls. It does have a picture, but even the picture is pretty simple. Simple floor. She's placing her feet on a book. So it's the idea that everything is unadorned. Now, the without frills aspect describes this image. However, austere can also be a personality trait, and that goes to the idea of severe. So if you talk about an austere woman who is stern with children, it's the idea that the woman is severe and strict with the children. Alright, so those are your two kind of definitions of austere and austerely. Moving on to the next word, we have expedite, or also expedient. So expedite is the verb and expedient is the adjective. You expedite a project, the project was expedient. So to make faster or easier. So here we have Expedia.com is aptly named as its purpose is to expedite people's access to inexpensive flights and hotels. So you might have heard of Expedia before on television or the internet, and the name of it comes from the word expedite. Alright? And again, remember, expedite is the verb and expedient is the adjective. Alright, so our next word is hearsay. So, an opinion violently opposed to established beliefs. And I think I said it wrong. It's heresy. I think I said hearsay. It's heresy, and it's an opinion violently opposed to established beliefs. So let's take a look at it in a sentence. Hannah was tired of people acting as though her dislike for chocolate was heresy. It was a perfectly normal dislike to have, and not some huge horrific violation of norms. So it's the idea that most people really, really, really like chocolate. So the fact that she doesn't like chocolate opposes established beliefs and therefore is heresy. Now, do know that heresy is usually a term that has religious connotations, so oftentimes violently opposing established beliefs would be violently opposing established beliefs within a religion. And that's oftentimes how this word is used, but as you can see here, it can be used outside of religion as well. Moving on to the next word, we have compromise, which is probably a word a lot of us are familiar with, but let's go through it anyway. So to settle by concession or surrender. In this sentence, it says, while they both wanted the toy car for their personal collection, the two purple monsters compromised by taking turns. So again, since it's a verb, the tense can change: compromise, compromised, compromising, and plenty of other forms of tenses. So moving on to the next word, we have condescend, to talk down to. So here we have James Van Der Beek's applause did not seem genuine. Actually, it seemed condescending, as though he was mocking us. So condescend is a verb, to condescend. However, here, it seemed condescending. Condescending is an adjective. Therefore, you have two forms of this word. It can be a verb or an adjective, depending on how you use it. All right, moving on to the next word, we have fallacious or fallacy. So false or untrue. So fallacious is the adjective and fallacy is the noun. So there's two forms we have here. And in the sentence, when Jack Sparrow was accused of stealing from and lying to his shipmates, he insisted that it was a fallacious accusation. So we can see how it's being used here as an adjective that's describing what type of accusation it is, fallacious. But it could also say he insisted that it was a fallacy, and then it would be using it as a noun. So essentially, fallacious is a way just to say something is false or untrue. Pretty straightforward. All right, moving to our next word, intangible. Abstract, not capable of being touched or felt. So, intangible, Jake the dog knew that his imagination was an intangible commodity, so it's an adjective, that he could use to get him through all situations, not only safely but successfully. So an imagination is something that cannot be touched, it's abstract, and we can't see it, we can't touch it, and therefore it is an intangible commodity. Moving on to our next word, we have arrogant, which is an adjective. If you wanted to turn it into a noun, you would write arrogance, N-C-E. And now arrogant is acting superior to others and being snooty. So some people find Kanye West a talented artist whose erratic behavior fuels his innovative music. Others find him to be an arrogant narcissist. What do you think? Oop, come back. Where'd he go? There he is. Alright, so arrogant is an adjective that describes the type of narcissist some people accuse him of, and if you wanted it to be a noun, you would use arrogance. Alright, so next we have the word compatible, and it means able to coexist and harmonious. So, here we have peanut butter and jelly are highly compatible. It is an adjective. They are highly compatible ingredients. However, when their close companion bread was forever taken away from them, they didn't know how they could continue onward. So with compatible, if you're hoping to turn that into a noun, you would turn it into compatibility. That is a thing. Compatibility is a thing, and therefore that would be your noun, and compatible is the adjective version of it. Oh, poor peanut butter, he's so upset. Alright, moving on. So next word we have is dubious, hesitating or doubting, and it is an adjective. Since he was an infant and not forming clear memories yet, or lucid memories, if you know that word, Thomas's dubious recollection of the doctor's office made him unsure of whether or not he could trust the lady with the stethoscope. So dubious, hesitating, or doubting. So Thomas's doubting recollection. That's kind of weird. It sounds a little odd when you just put in the definition. Therefore, you got to make sure that you use dubious in a way that it sounds correct. It's not, you can't just immediately replace it with doubting. So what is doubting is whether or not the recollection is true. So with dubious, there's connotations of whether or not it's true. That's what you're hesitant about, the validity of the memory. So you might have the dubious statement, And what that would mean is a statement you're not quite sure is true. The dubious memory, a memory you're not quite sure is true. The dubious sign, a sign that might not just be trustworthy. So those are the ways in which you would use dubious. So just make sure you're using it correctly, as it's a little more difficult than some of the other words that we've looked at. All right, moving on. Our next word is solicit, to ask for, to seek. So solicit is the verb, solicitor is the noun, and solicitation is also a noun. A solicitor offers solicitations, or a solicitor solicitates solicitations. That's just confusing. So the apartment complex had strict rules against all door-to-door solicitation, that's the noun version, ranging from food to fundraisers. So just remember, the solicitor is the person who solicits, solicit is a verb, a thing you do, and a solicitation is a noun. That's what's being solicited. All right, next word. Elusive or elude. So elusive is the adjective. A thing is elusive. Elude is the verb. You elude something, to elude. So what these mean is tough to catch and hard to pin down. So we have, Misha was surprised to find the elusive Eba owl beneath her hat. There were only a few hundred left out in the wild. So here we can see elusive, the adjective is being used to describe the Eba owl. However, you could also say the Eba owl eludes many people that seek it out, using it as an adjective. All right, our next word is facilitate. So facilitate means to make something easier and to help. So the staff met for a meeting of the minds in hopes that it would facilitate solutions for ongoing problems that had plagued the office. So to make easier, to help, is the idea. Facilitate means to create a space or an opportunity. Oop, where'd it go? Sorry guys, I think my laptop freaked out. All right, there we are. So facilitate is to create a situation or an opportunity in order to help. So kind of like dubious, this word doesn't perfectly match the definition. You can't just substitute one in for the other. It would, to help solutions doesn't make sense. So make sure you're using facilitate correctly, in which is providing an opportunity of help. All right. So next word we have is static, which is stationary and not moving. So here we have Olivia felt as though her life had become static. Nothing had really changed for over 10 years. So here we have an adjective that describes something not moving. So we're not talking about static on a television screen. That's not the static we're talking about. This static means not moving, and it can both be literal and figurative. So feeling as though her life has become static is a more figurative use of it, as life doesn't physically move like a car might. However, you might say that the car was static in order to just say the car is not moving. So you can use it in a figurative or a literal manner. A word that this is similar to is stagnant. However, unlike stagnant, static doesn't really have a negative connotation. It just means still. Stagnant, on the other hand, has a negative connotation of being kind of like old and moldy and like unnew and dirty. So stagnant has negative connotations, while static does not. For our next word, we have ironic, which is a literary term you might already be familiar with. But ironic is the satiric term, and it means unexpected. I think that's spelled wrong. Whoops. So in this sentence, we see Mitzi did not appreciate the irony of the birthday cake. Every time she tried to blow it out, blow out the candles, her fire breath made them burn brighter. Oh, poor Mitzi. So here we have irony, and irony is the noun form of ironic. So ironic is an adjective, and irony is the noun. So moving on, we have irrational, which means unreasonable and unpredictable, making it an adjective. While most of Markle's friends thought that his fear of flowers was irrational, he still stood by the fact that those little petals were terrifying. I agree, it's a very scary picture. So irrational is an adjective. It's pretty straightforward. So our next word is dogmatic, which means stubbornly opinionated. Again, dogmatic has religious connotations in which it tends to be stubbornly opinionated about an aspect of religion. However, it doesn't always have to be used that way, such as here, Mr. Canberra was dogmatic in his reading of the Scarlet Letter. He found any contradicting interpretations blatantly wrong. So here, dogmatic is the adjective, but know that there is also a noun, which is dogma. Alright, and our last word is going to be flagrant, which means shocking and outstandingly bad. It is an adjective, and outraged, the flagrant foul had not been called. The audience booed for several minutes. So shockingly, outstandingly bad foul, definitely a negative connotation. Alright, so those are your words for this lesson. Make sure to use your practice slides to practice, and good luck. Thank you for watching the video.